You're very welcome on behalf of UCD Smurfit Executive Development. My name is Caroline Kinsella and I'm delighted to be joined with John O'Gorman today, our colleague and guest speaker for today's webinar. John works with executive teams all across Europe and in industries such as retail banking, investment banking, pharma and sports industries. He's author of 6 books on accelerating and sustaining performance of teams and growth projects. But we work very closely with John on the UCD Professional Diploma in High Performance Sales and Business Development for over 5 years now. John also teaches on our customized portfolio. He looks at new ways of thinking and measurement of collective performance potential. John holds several qualifications. I'll mention those that are from UCD, his proud alma mater. He has an executive MBA and a diploma in business and executive coaching from the UCD Smurfit Business School. He's also one of approximately 30,000 executive coaches around the world that has accreditation from the International Coaching Federation. He loves Formula One and is an avid reader, which I'm sure he'll tell us more about later on in the session. So without eating into John's time this morning, I'm going to hand over to John shortly, and just to let you know, we would like you to ask questions throughout the session using the chat feature at the bottom or the top of your screens, depending on the device that you're using, and also to have your phones at the ready. This is going to be very interactive, very dynamic, so it would be great if you could participate in the polls and the exercises that John has in store for us. So welcome to those that have just joined us. Settle in and enjoy, and we'll talk to you very briefly at the end. I'll hand over to John. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here with you today. I'm going to share 3 big ideas with you today. The first of those is around the concept of what we call performance potential. The second one is an idea around the concept of performance losses and gains, and remodeling performance is the third thing I want to share with you. What I'm going to ask you to do today is to take a critical project or a team that you're working in and apply these 3 big ideas to either the project or the team that you're thinking about. The overall objective I have for you is that we'll get you to do some measurement. We'll get you to look in at that team or the critical project and to look at it in a slightly different way with a new type of model, which is based on Formula One. Caroline mentioned I'm passionate about Formula One, so I'll share a bit about that and why that is. And then hopefully you'll be able to take what we bring you through today and unlock some performance potential, or at least have ideas around how you can unlock some performance potential. So 3 big ideas and 3 objectives for the session today. Caroline did say the session was going to be interactive. So I'm going to ask you now, if you could, to take up your phone or indeed just open up a web page on your PC or on your Kindle or device that you've got lying around, and to go to a website called polev.com. So the URL is there on the top of the slide, polev.com/RACY393. So if you'd like to go to that, and we'll give you a few seconds to do that, and I'll talk you through what we're going to do. And when you go to that site, there's no downloadable software. Everything we do on that poll is going to be anonymous, and anything that gets stored in data centers will be wiped directly after this. So there's no worries about data storage. Please keep the poll window open, and you know, Caroline has muted everybody and your videos are off, I'm aware. So if you do want to interact or ask questions throughout the session, just pop them into the chat to Caroline, and Caroline will pass them over to me at certain points. And if you want to tweet anything throughout the session around any of the ideas, at Smurfit Exec Ed, we'll be delighted about that, and at Growth Pit Stop are the 2 Twitter handles. And I found myself saying on these sessions over the past number of weeks and months, we're all in a new norm and we're all working from various different locations. So if you do drop off, just log back in again and rejoin us at any point in time. And it's the same with the poll. If you pop out of the poll, you can just log in at any time, polev.com/RACY393. So when you do log into that page, it's going to look something like this on the phone, which is on the phone. When you get in, there'll be a question. So I'm hoping that you've all logged into polev.com/RACY393. So we're going to start this interactive session and this poll with this question. So what percentage of your team's full potential is presently being exploited? So I see some people are interacting with that right now. And so I'm going to let people get familiar with the poll and put in their responses. So lots of responses coming in there. This is a really powerful place to start any conversation with a team that are responsible for delivering a critical project, or a team that are thinking about themselves in terms of their next phase of development. Where are they in terms of their full potential? Now you'll notice on the question it says percentage of your team's full potential. It doesn't say percentage of your team's full performance. So performance and potential are two different things. And what we find in most organizations that we work in, and any of the people that come out to our programs, they want to talk about high performance. And many of my colleagues are actually getting frustrated with the term high performance. Because when we ask back what is high performance to senior executives, and we ask them to put a measurement and a number on it, they sometimes look at us and say, well, we don't have a standard definition of what high performance is. So what we like to talk about is this concept of performance to potential. So a P to P ratio. So performance is what you're achieving. Potential is what you could achieve. And putting a ratio of performance to potential on it is one of the things that we work on our program, particularly in the early stage of the Diploma in High Performance Business Development and Sales. We get people to tune into this concept of performance and potential. And I'd ask you to reflect. So I'm going to just show the regions there of where the bands are coming in. So we see one person's down at about 15%, and then there's a cluster in and around the kind of 70–80% zone. Yeah. So you can see those clusters. What I'd like to share with you is we've asked that question thousands of times over the past 18 months, and we've been asking it more recently in the past number of months of where teams are where senior leaders are putting their teams on this continuum. And the average answer is in and around 64%. There's a kind of a cluster, and you see that there's a cluster there today. So I'd say to people, reflect. Take a critical project or a critical team and be thinking about that critical project or critical team as you're working through this webinar this morning. So first big idea, ask the question around potential, and then get the concept of a ratio of performance to potential. So performance is what you're achieving today, and potential is what potential you could achieve tomorrow. Simple concept, but when you get beneath it, certain levels of complexity come out. So again, now I'd ask you to reflect, take a minute, take a pen up into your hand and ask yourself, what could propel your answer forward? So if you said that your team's at 60% potential, what could propel it forward? What would you do to propel that forward? And what could it propel it forward to? That's the first question I asked you to reflect on. And then the second question I asked you to reflect on is, what could hold that back? So what could propel it forward and what could hold it back? Okay, some of the things that we hear around what could propel things forward. Propelling things forward around, have we got alignment around our critical project? Have we got alignment around the key results the team needs to achieve? Have we got clarity of roles around the project and around the team, and have we got stakeholder alignment? Things that could propel us forward. Things that are holding us back right now, obviously challenges with ways of working, people in distributed locations, the fact that sometimes managers and leaders are now working in this new way. They've never worked with a distributed team, but then now they've got to deliver a critical project. So those are some of the things that we're hearing from our clients right now. But the goal is to propel the performance potential ratio forward. So I'm going to skip on to the next slide and talk about zones of performance. So I'm going to build a slide and you'll see 4 different zones. The crisis zone, less than 25%. The danger zone, less than 55%. The normal zone of 55 to 74. And the zone of peak performance at 75% plus. Normally when we're working with our participants on the programs, and there's a great reaction to this slide. They say, why only 75%? It sounds low. It doesn't sound like Formula One, John. Well, let me explain. As one of my colleagues would point out, the zone of peak performance, exploiting more than 75% of your full performance potential, is operating at 90% effectiveness levels up to 85% of the time. Because if you do the maths, 90 by 85, you're talking in and around the 75% zone. So the zone of peak performance sets a very high standard, giving yourself a 9 out of 10, 85% of the time. So think about any of the teams that you're operating and working with right now. Are they operating at 90, 95% effectiveness levels, 80 to 90% of the time? It's a pretty high standard. What we find is the zone of peak performance, it's not a crowded place, and the zone of peak performance requires discipline, persistence. It also requires the ability to deal with frustrations, because inevitably, if you're running critical projects that cross borders within organizations, it can be difficult to get everybody on board to operate in that peak zone all the time. So what we find is that there's a cluster. There's a cluster of projects and teams sitting in the zone of normal, in around that zone of 50 to 74%. And as I said to you, the benchmark is 64%. So I'd ask you to think and say, where is my project? Or where are my teams? Where are they on these zones? And ultimately, what we're trying to do is help teams and help projects spend more time in the zone of peak performance. Now, that's easier said than done. And one of the things that sometimes we get frustrated with our clients is that people say, okay, well, spending more time in the zone of peak performance means we need better leadership, or we need a better structure, or we need to improve culture, or we just need to just do it. And what we would say to you is you need all of that. You need a multidisciplinary approach. There's no single answer in leadership or structure or culture. You've got to pull those disciplines together and take a multidisciplinary approach. And so we're going to hopefully bring to you today and get you to engage in that multidisciplinary approach. So there's various different zones. And what I decided to do was I decided to take out a project that we've recently done with a major financial services organization, where their senior leadership team was asked this question around performance and potential of their key strategic initiatives. So they had 4 strategic priorities: digital enablement, a new income project, managing their talent in terms of high potentials, and sustaining a 10% growth. And that was back in January. And what they did was they plotted their strategic priorities onto this big question, onto the grid, and then had a discussion about the priorities and what priorities held the most potential and what priorities needed some focus. So this is a great way, this question around what percentage of your team's potential or your strategic project's potential are being exploited right now, and getting people to engage with that question. So my advice to you would be, if you could, on your next Zoom call, take out that question. You've permission to use it. We can give you the graphic. What percentage of this project's full potential is presently being exploited? And ask your colleagues to put an answer and put a metric on it. And then ask them to take 3 or 4 minutes. And that concept of what could propel the project forward and what could hold the project back. And get them to talk about that once they've had a chance to engage with those questions. And then as the leader of the team or the project, see what comes up. See what emerges. See if there's some patterns. The ability to engage with this big question is essentially a test. It's a test of mindset. It's a test of the team's ability and energy to engage with the concept of not just performance, but potential also. It's a test of the team's ability also to potentially disagree and to stay cohesive. Because oftentimes there's a variance. Same members in a team can take one critical project and someone can put it at 40% potential and another person can put it at 80% of full potential. What's going on? Same team members looking at things in a different way. So it's a test of the ability of those people to be able to dialogue effectively and to stay cohesive. But it's also a test of the ability of that team to nudge forward after the conversation. What are they going to do? Test of its ability to act. And also the test of the ability to engage with data. Because I've asked you that question, and I've asked it of you to give a gut feel answer. But the reality is a gut feel answer isn't enough. You've got to measure more variables. And on the programs that we engage with, both in customized and outside with our clients, we measure over 200 key variables, what we call performance losses. And I'm going to introduce that concept in a minute. But what I want you to think about is big question, test. It's a test of the team's ability to engage with the question. It's a test of the team's ability to engage and stay cohesive, and possibly to agree and to disagree. And the test of the team's ability to act. So if you're thinking about the project team or your own team, have they the ability to engage with a question like that with energy and with passion, and then have the ability to take that forward? Okay, so the concepts of, I mentioned performance gains and performance losses. Performance is what the team is achieving today. Potential is what it can achieve tomorrow. The difference we call performance losses or gains. It's what's holding the team back. Those performance losses and gains fall into various different categories. The common one and the favorite one that people like to go to is, oh, it's the behaviors of our team. It's the culture of our team. We need to work on our ability to communicate. We need to work on our discipline. We need to work on our persistence. And kind of the cultural factors that sometimes people lean in towards. What we'd say is there's other factors. There's factors around leadership. As I said earlier on, there's factors around structure. There's the factors around execution. And it's all of those factors together that form the concept or factors of performance losses or gains. And as I said, there's over 200 of them that we've built up in our library with our clients over the years. So you've got to hone in on figuring in on which one of those, what process losses, performance losses or potential performance gains are affecting your critical projects or critical teams. So slowing down and saying to yourself, performance today, potential tomorrow. What is the potential and what's holding our team back, and what are the performance losses or gains that are affecting our businesses or our teams? People sometimes say to me, losses or gains, John, and I say to them, it's a mindset. I say, they stay losses if you do nothing about them. They become gains if you do something about them. Inevitably, there's obstacles in every environment, and they are your sources of performance losses or potential performance gains. And inevitably, in this period of time, when we're all working under huge pressure, there is going to be obstacles to getting our work done and to delivering the key projects that we need to deliver. And it's to accept that they are obstacles. They can be removed. So what are the sources of performance loss or potential performance gains for your team? And before we move on, I'd like to ask you to think about this in terms of numbers. So numbers, imagine you've got a project, and that project is costing, I don't know, €5 million to run it. And you're saying that the performance potential of that project right now is sitting at approximately 70%. Well, we know that you can't get it to a full 100%, but we figure you can probably get it to anywhere between 85 and 90%. So there's a potential performance loss there of 70 to 90, we'll say 20. And the cost of the project is €5 million. So potentially we're losing an amount of money, 20% on that 5 million. Or alternatively, you take the team that are delivering that project and the cost to run that team, and they're operating at 60% or 70%. You can put numbers around the cost of these potential performance losses, or you can put numbers around the fact that there are performance gains in the environment. And what we're finding right now is you have to be able to put a measure and put a number around these sources of potential gain or loss for the senior executives that are going to approve budget in these very difficult times. So back to, can we create a compelling business case, and can we use the concept of performance gains and losses to help us with that? Okay, that's idea number 2. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a little video for you. And the video is going to give you some of the concepts and ideas that I wanted to get across from Formula One. The video is also, it's 2 minutes long, so it's going to give you a break from listening to me and give you a time to sit back, settle in, and then I'm going to bring you through the model that we've developed over the past 12 years with over 1,000 teams to help unlock performance gains and losses. So let's hope you can hear the video and the audio. Okay, why Formula One? So you don't have to like Formula One to enjoy the rest of this webinar. Sometimes people in our program say, but John, I don't like it, I find it boring or it's noisy. But let me tell you why our team looked to Formula One 12 years ago. And the reason our team looked to Formula One was we were working with many teams at that stage in the sales and marketing arena. And what we found was sales and marketing challenges were generally strategic challenges. And those strategic challenges were generally total performance challenges, and they were complex. So in Formula One, you have a driver and they drive a high performance vehicle and they try to drive that vehicle to the limit. Those drivers are disciplined, they're persistent, but they rely on a team. So you'll see on the left-hand corner of the screen, we have a driver. So that's you. It's the leader or the manager of this critical project or team, or your boss if you're coming on this webinar and you're not the leader of the team. The team, this is the team you're working with. So there's a driver and there's a team. And then there's a machine. And the machine in Formula One, as I say, has to be driven to the limit. But imagine this machine is a strategic project or initiative you're trying to work on in your organization. It may be the launch of a new product. It may be a strategic initiative around digital enablement. It may be a strategic initiative around a new income opportunity or the launch of a new product. Or indeed, it may be just a strategic initiative right now, which is to maintain what you've got, which is maintain the levels of income with your key clients. So the machine becomes your strategic initiative, and then the track is where you're operating, where that machine, where that strategic initiative needs to be delivered. It's out there where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. In Formula One, in 1982, one of the first pit stops took place. Actually, one of the modern pit stops took place. I should correct myself, in 1982. And Formula One changed from really being about a great driver and a great machine to being a great driver requiring a great team and a great machine. And those three things coming together to maximize the chance of winning. And those drivers that driver in 1982 took a fast pit stop. What we encourage teams to do, instead in workshops or meetings, take a pit stop. And the role of the pit stop is to maximize the chance of winning and minimize the chance of losing. Or the role of the pit stop is to find the source of performance gain or loss and work on it quickly to get the vehicle back out onto the track as quickly and as fast as you possibly can. So there's many parallels in business, as I say, driver being the leader and manager, the pit team being the team who are tasked with helping to ensure that that metaphorical vehicle, your strategic project or initiative, has maximum chances when it's out on the track, where there's some execution. So I'm going to lean you into and tell you a story of a tale of two teams. So in our model that I'm going to share with you over the next 20 minutes or so, one team is high performing. There's lots of process gains. They're working with the right people in the right roles, doing the right work, and I'll talk to you about the concept of performance design in a minute. But the top team is a high performing team in the model, and the bottom team is low performing. And what I mean by low performing is there's lots of process losses, and there's people working independently, co-acting one space, but not necessarily coming together in a cohesive manner to deliver what it needs to deliver. And so the meta model is essentially a tale of two teams. So I'm going to introduce you now to the next poll. So if you click forward, what I'd ask you to do is, you'll see on the visual in front of you, you'll see a number of people facing a machine. And I'd ask you to log into the poll, pollev.com/rayc393 if you've left it, and type in the words that just come to mind when you see that picture. What are the words that come in? What are the words that you're thinking of when you see that picture? So we've got together, working, aligned, coordinated, busy. I encourage you all to interact with that. The bigger word is coming up: collaborative, coordinated, cohesive, together. Brilliant. I'll give it another few seconds to see what else comes in. So there are all the words: cohesive, working together, collaborative, coordinated. Some people saying busy or maybe in sync. I'm going to ask you to stop engaging with that for a second, and please pause for a second before you answer this poll. So what I'm showing you here is the top of the model illuminated, and you'll see the labels right people in the right roles, working on the right work, working together in the right way, with the right resources and the right rewards, focused on the right results. So 7 key rights. Looks very simple. You notice the 3 people are there to change the tires of the vehicle. Coordinated, collaborative. They're working interdependently, working together with synergy. So I'd ask you to reflect for a moment. What aspects of your team's performance design, this is the concept of performance design, the 7 factors. Some people call it structure, we call it performance design, are maybe under most pressure right now. And I'd encourage you to interact with the poll now. So for the team that you chose earlier on, or the critical project, what aspects of performance design are most under pressure at this time? And all you need to do in the poll again is just interact with the poll. And let's see what people click to select which aspects of your team's performance design are most under pressure right now. Your responses will save automatically when they come in. Let's see what shows up here for the people on the webinar today. So interesting. Wow, a lot of diversity. So a bunch. Caroline, how many people do we have on the webinar today?
We have just short of 100 people on the webinar.
Okay, so we've about 100 dispersed. Yeah. So looking at this, seems to be quite a number of people on right resources, quite a number of people on working together in the right way. Wow, interesting. Under pressure. What I'd like to say about this is right results is over here at the end. You'll notice over on the right hand side. What we're seeing right now on the projects and teams that we're working with is that there needs to be a relook at what are the results this team are responsible for, and a check, and not just a check on the short term in terms of the next 1 to 2 months, but take another time horizon, take a 3 to 6 month time horizon, and look to what are those results that need to be delivered right now. The other key area, which I'm going to talk to you about, is in a moment, is right way of working. But in terms of right results, asking yourself, are we all clear on the targets for this project or team? Asking yourselves how confident we are in terms of can we achieve those results, and embracing the discussion around the confidence and targets and seeing what comes up for people. Right results coming first, then checking in on the factors around working together in the right way, holding a huge opportunity, or we would call a huge potential performance gain. Have we clarified how we're working together right now to make it the right way of working? Many of my colleagues are facing challenges around working long hours, going from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. I'm sure a lot of you are the same with back-to-back meetings. Right way of working can mean setting some boundaries within the team, talking about some of those norms, talking about things that are working, things that are not working. So what are the right ways of working right now on these projects, particularly if you've got distributed teams in multiple locations, and indeed the fact that a lot of teams aren't going to see the office until September, October this year. So performance design, have you got the right people in the right roles, doing the right work, working together in the right way, focused on the right rewards, with the right resources towards the right results? 7 rights, performance design. If you go into a classroom in London Business School or online classroom in London Business School right now, you will have a professor talking about the concept of structure or performance design. And they will talk passionately about it. Performance design is critical, but it's not the only factor. So what I'd encourage you to do is think now about the next level of factors that we're going to bring you into. Caroline, is there a question or two right now that I see popping in?
There is, John, you're ahead of me there. So we have a question about how does diversity affect the potential and performance of teams? Thanks to Manny, who just completed the Diploma in Corporate Governance with us.
Yeah, so I think under that factor, right people, we measure what's the diversity in the team. And it's interesting that question around diversity, what do we mean by diversity? And I think that's an interesting conversation to have with a team. So what we find is that right mix and right level of diversity within the team scores as an opportunity for improvement in many of the teams. Caroline, what was the specific question there? Can you just repeat it again?
How does diversity affect the potential and performance of teams?
Huge, because I think what we need to have is a diversity of thinking. And if you go back to that, where we started today around that big question, what percentage of the project or team's full potential is being exploited? You should see a variance, and I'd hope to see a variance within the team, that you wouldn't just have everybody clustered at around a 60%, because what that may indicate is that there's groupthink. And that there isn't enough diversity of thinking. And what we encourage when we get teams together to think about this question, the person who may see things differently may have a different voice, may have a different perspective. And they may see the project down at 30 or 40% of full potential, but what they're actually seeing is that there's more potential to gain, and you've got to step in and embrace that. So it's that diversity of thinking that's absolutely crucial. We should have also said that the question around performance potential is situational. You know, you can have a team that are hitting their key targets and they get to the end of the quarter and everything's great. And they think, you know what, we're at 80, 90% of our full potential. And then all of a sudden, the following Friday, something has happened. COVID has come in, or there's been a big uncertainty in the environment. Now the performance potential can shift back down to 50%. So you've got to embrace the fact that you need to be continuously discussing this concept of not just where we are in terms of performance, but what is the potential we're trying to unlock this week. And that diversity of thinking is crucial in that.
Mm-hmm. There's a more general question just at the start of the webinar. Is this model particularly suited for specific industries?
Well, I think that's interesting. My history, for anybody who knows me well, would have been we started off in the technology industry, and we went from the technology industry back in 2007, 2008. So we're around for our second big volatile bump in the environment. We had the recession in 2007 and 2008, and this model was used with professional services firms across construction engineering to help them figure out, okay, where can we find ways to drive further growth. And it went from there into pharmaceutical, where we work with some of the top names in pharmaceutical, and indeed it's been used by some sports teams, which is, as you know, I'm quite passionate about how sport links into business. But from the perspective of what business can bring to sport, as much as what sport can bring to business, because I think it can. So we've used this model across 12 different industries, and I don't see why it can't be used across most environments. Yeah, and the one industry that I would say is that it hasn't been fully tested in is the public sector, and that's for various reasons. We haven't tried it out there. However, in the UK, one of our colleagues, who is an ex-Formula One executive, is using some of the principles in the health service in the UK to help them fine-tune things. Okay, so where we've got to, concept of big question, concept of performance gains and losses, and we're introducing you into this pit stop meta model now, and we've introduced you to the concept of performance design, which is the top of what we call the top of the pit stop meta model, and it will build as we go along. So I'm going to ask you now to jump back into the poll, and you've got 75, 80 seconds to give me a view on what words would you use to describe the picture that I'm showing in front of you, and see what will come up. Disconnected. It's the first word in. Messy is a word that I see there. Silos, confused, chaos, players, interesting, disjointed. Give it another few seconds to see what's shown up there for people. Wow. Okay. Okay, so the big words that are popping out there: silo, disjointed, individual. So let me step forward and illuminate that picture for you a bit more. So we call these, and please again, can you hold off interacting with this poll for a second, and I'll just explain the visual here. So what you've got here is what we call 8 behaviors, and we call these performance dynamics. Some people call these factors culture. So you've got tension and cohesion, sense of urgency, excitement and adrenaline, communication, trust and respect, continuous improvement, focus on winning, and discipline and persistence. What I draw your attention to is the person at tension and cohesion is about to give the person with sense of urgency a lug nut over the head. The person with the excitement and adrenaline has a fire extinguisher, you'll notice there in their hand. The person on trust and respect has a medical kit, and the person on focus on winning is drinking champagne on their own. And there's a nail in the pit lane there around discipline and persistence. The person with the communication label has a loudspeaker in their hand. What we'd say to you is this team is these people are co-acting the same space, but they're not connected. They wouldn't be the type of team that you would want to be pulling into to change the wheels of your Formula One car, or the type of team you'd want to be working with, whereby all of these factors are in play, where there's too much tension, too little cohesion, too high a sense of urgency, too much excitement, or too much adrenaline. So what we say around these factors is you've got to get these factors right, and you've got to start to discuss these factors in your team. And inevitably, what we want to do is we want to find out where there are some sources of performance gain or loss around these key factors. So let's interact with the poll now. Sorry, I should have, I'm going to click the slide forward and I'm going to go again on the poll. So you've got 70, 80 seconds back into poll EV, and think about these performance dynamics and which of them now are a source of performance gain for your team. So not a source of performance loss, slightly different question. Which ones of these hold a source of performance gain for your team? And let's see what comes up. Okay, I'll give it another few seconds and see what else comes in. So continuous improvement seems to be getting a lot, discipline and persistence, excitement and adrenaline, trust and respect. Interesting. Okay. So 8 key behavioral factors here that could affect the performance and potential of your critical project or your critical team. Let me draw your attention into 2 of those factors, tension and cohesion. Are the team, project team, sales team, or whatever team you're thinking about, able to bring enough tension to the work and remain and keep cohesive? So tension and cohesion, 2 sides. Yeah. So in our conversations, are we able to have constructive conversations? Are we able to challenge each other and debate? Back to the point about diversity, have we high enough levels of diversity within the team to maintain that tension and cohesion? That's one of the key areas that we're seeing as a source of performance gain, particularly in this environment, particularly in the environment where people are working really, really hard, but they're in a new scenario, they're in a new situation. They're either working from home or they're going in and out of the office the odd day of the week. So how is the team able to balance that level of being tension and cohesion when they're together, particularly under these times of pressure? And the second area is trust and respect. A lot of teams will say, yep, we're a great team and we trust each other. Now that's interesting. I ask people, you know, trust I could trust Caroline, but do I respect her? Of course I do. So I trust and respect her. So think about the team of people that you're working with, you're working on this project. Is there high levels of trust and high levels of respect? Is there mutual respect? Is there an appreciation for each other? And back to that test around the big question, are they able to disagree and continuously perform together over a period of time? So we're all human beings. When we disagree with people, sometimes we then tell ourselves a story in our mind. So we need to make sure that there's high levels of trust and respect within the team. And putting a number and putting a measurement on that is kind of interesting. So enabling your team to engage with some data analytics around trust and respect is something to consider, to help people hone in and say, okay, are we really trusting and respecting each other? So if I was to pick two of the key factors around performance dynamics that are affecting teams right now, it is that tension and cohesion and trust and respect. And examples around trust and respect. How are we meeting together? Are we turning up for the meetings on time? Are they starting on time? Are they finishing on time? Are we discussing the behaviors that we need in the meetings and the behaviors that we expect? And are we recognizing emotions that are in the room? Because if people can recognize the emotions, then it's a pure sign that they are trusting and respecting each other. So think about, the final thing I'd ask you to think about under trust and respect is, if you take the team that you're working in right now and you took a blank page and you said, what are the behaviors that are actually helping us move forward and are conducive to unlocking more of our performance potential? And then what are some of those behaviors that are causing us a performance loss? And my greatest bugbear is around interactions. If they're supposed to start at a particular time, are people showing up at a particular time, or are they showing up 6 minutes late or 7 minutes late or 8 minutes late? Might seem nothing to a senior executive, but if you've 9 people in a room waiting for you to join a call and you're 6 minutes late, well, there's an hour lost across that team that could have been put into something else. And time is a sure, turning up on time is a sure factor around trust and respect of what's going on. So something to think about. Okay, so we've got the top of the model and the bottom of the model. So we've got performance design, performance dynamics. And the top of the model was a demonstration of order: right people, right roles, right work, right way, right resources, right rewards, and right results, focusing in on the strategic initiative that you're trying to drive. The bottom of the model was the example of the team in chaos. What we want to do is make sure we have order, and then we bring some of that energy, excitement to the party. So as I was saying earlier on, in London Business School today, or any other big institution around the world that's discussing how to get things executed, they'll talk about the concept of performance design or structure. And then you'll have other people in the same institute talking about performance dynamics, but not necessarily mentioning performance design. You need both together. You need performance design and performance dynamics linked together to achieve the full potential within the team and to drive that potential forward. So if I could leave you with one key message today, or one of the key messages I want you to think about is, have we got the right performance design, and how conducive are our performance dynamics to helping us drive the strategic project forward, or to help unlock the potential around the team. So that's driver. We've talked about the team. So let me talk about now the machine. So again, before you interact, I'm going to ask you to hold for a second, and I'm going to let me explain this model to you. So this is the machine. This is your strategic project. So let me ask you this question: how focused and aligned, so the front nose cone of your strategic project, is there clarity around the purpose of the project, the results of the project, and the priorities that project needs to deliver right now? How focused and aligned are we? It's the first element of the machine. Second two are around, are we clear on what this project is going to deliver to the business? What is the project product? What is the output for the project? And is it clear? Is there good packaging, messaging, branding around the project or the team? Who are our customers, both internal and external? Who are our customers? So precision around the front of the model. So focus and alignment, product service script, and customer market fit. Then I go to the back of the model. Is there enough activity and enough effectiveness? Are we in the right gear? And are we pushing the vehicle forward in terms of our accelerator? Have we got our visibility and control? So we got our systems, structures, reporting. And then have we got a champion driver driving the machine? So they're the key elements of the model. Precision from the front of the model, power from the back. So I'm going to ask you now, just very quickly, in the last 37 seconds or so on the slide, to interact with this model and ask yourself, which of the following aspects of strategy execution represent a performance loss for your team right now? Let's see what comes up. Okay, we're in the last 10 seconds or so of the poll, so we'll give it another few seconds. Okay, so the poll is closed. What you see there is there's a huge number around focus and alignment, and it appears there's a bunch at the back of the vehicle as well. It's really interesting around focus and alignment. There's interconnections between right results at the top of the model and focus and alignment here on the machine. And I think one of the things right now for strategic projects, for initiatives, for teams, it's to look at the time horizons that you're operating in. And a lot of the teams that we've been working with over the past, since the 12th of March, in fact, they were focusing on what we call a time horizon 1, which was kind of a 0 to 3 months, which brought us to about now. A lot of the more progressive teams, or the teams that are actually have been able to push forward now and who are capitalizing more of the performance gains, are those teams who are able to look in at focus and alignment and look into the next time horizon around what's the purpose of the project for the next period of time, for the next 6 months, what are the results we're trying to deliver, and as a result of that, what are our priorities. And we've been encouraging teams to look in at these time horizons dynamically, and we call it dynamic alignment. So in Formula One, I'm just going to play a little video now of something that they do with the nose cone, and let me relate that. Let me relate that back to business. So there's going to be a bit of noise now in a second. So let me pre-warn you of that. And dynamic alignment in action. In Formula One, that's an old video from an old team, but they're able to, what you'll have seen in that video is they're able to take on and off the nose cone of the vehicle. So when the nose cone of the vehicle gets damaged, they pull in for a pit stop and they quickly whip off the nose cone and put back on a new one. And what we're encouraging teams to do right now is to look at the nose cone of their strategic initiatives. To reflect on the purpose. Is the purpose for the initiative the same as it was back in January? Are the results the same as they were back in January? And what are the priorities? So we talk about 3 levels around focus and alignment: purpose, results, and priorities. Now, can I ask you to just think about the project or team that you've been kind of case studying today, and ask yourself, if I asked 3 members of that team that I'm in around the top 3 results, the top 3 priorities for us for the next time horizon of, we'll say, 6 months, would you get alignment around those? Something to think about. I see, Caroline, you're jumping in there with the chat and some questions. Do you want to throw 1 or 2 at me at this juncture?
Yes, so there was a question about what part of the model gets most attention.
So right now, the part of the model that is getting the most attention is focus and alignment, right results, and right way. They're the pieces that are getting most attention right now. I think a blind spot for many projects and teams is in the area of right roles. So is there role gap or role overlap within the project team or within the team? And that can be that role gap, role overlap. And we look in and measure that. And sometimes that's one of the key areas that we're curious around. If there's role gap or role overlap, is that a source of friction within the team, which affects the bottom of the model around tension and cohesion? So I'd say to you, the immediate answer is nose cone and right way of working are the things that people are talking about with us right now, particularly around new ways of working. It's the common term, new ways of working. And what I'm curious about on new ways of working is teams are saying we need to build on things that have improved for us, and we need to pay attention to those things. However, there are things that aren't going as well maybe as people might have liked, or maybe there's things that aren't being talked about. So we've got to be able to talk about the right way of working in terms of the things that are going well, but also the things that maybe we need to leave behind. So it's a complex picture, Caroline. There's we've got driver, team, machine. What we're illuminating here is there's 22 parameters that are affecting the performance and potential of the team. But we cataloged a library of the source of 200 variables that affect that. So it's not the visual is visually engaging and it looks simple. It's far from simple because it's multidisciplinary. And we talk a lot about that on the first 2 days of the program that I lead out in Smurfit, around the complexity and embracing the complexity and being comfortable with the complexity. And the final thing I'd say is this model that we've developed over the past 12 years has been developed with over 1,000 teams, and it's been developed to visually express the complexity. That was one of the key reasons we chose Formula One and the visual representation, because we're all familiar with some great models, business models out there, fantastic models. But some of the challenges senior executives would say they have with them is they're square boxes, they're black and white. How can we visually engage? So you need something visual to engage people, and particularly as the next generation of worker comes along.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question.
Thanks, John. We have just a question here around psychological safety from TJ. TJ is asking, psychological safety, is it the critical dimension for successful teams, or do you think it's a driver of team performance or an outcome of other factors? Well,
TJ, I was just listening to the book, The Fearless Organization, over the weekend. And it talks about that very point around psychological safety. In a pit stop, everyone needs to feel safe. There's no doubt about it. Safety is really, really important. And I think one of the challenges is if you bring a bunch of people together, how do you create that safety and how do you maintain that safety? And going back to the intent is performance today, potential tomorrow. We've got to create the safety around talking about both performance and potential. It's not easy. It's not easy done. The role of the leader is huge in that, the role of the driver. And my passion, one of my passions, as Caroline said to you earlier on, was Formula One. And one of the best drivers in the world has been ill for a long period of time. Ill maybe is an understatement, but Michael Schumacher. And if anyone reads about Michael Schumacher, one of the things was he loved his team and he loves the machine, and he worked with both. You've got to be able to work with the machine and the team, and the team has to have a voice, and the team members have to have a voice. So psychological safety is very, very important, obviously. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to take another question, John?
Yeah, let's throw another one there. Yeah. Yeah.
Karen, just a question there. Karen was saying, during COVID-19, have you found that teams you work with have found the answers to some of the aspects of the model that they were curious about previously?
Yeah, so I think that was interesting. Pre-COVID-19, there may have been some cracks around certain parts of the model, but people weren't necessarily engaging with them. More the cracks that emerged now through COVID. So I think yes is the answer to your question. I think the key thing about COVID has been is we're doing this, we're not together. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. If we were doing this engagement, we'd have it out in Smurfit and we'd be having our social engagement around things. I think that social piece, that social connection, is the piece that's been missing around COVID, which goes back to right way of working. We're doing virtual pit stops, as you know, and one of the things is we're trying to build in some of that laughter, some of that fun, some of that social connection, because that's what's being lost. That's what people are missing, right now. And I see you smiling. You and I have had this conversation.
I'm rocking into the machine.
Yeah. We brought some of our classes together this year just to bring that connection back and have a bit of fun and have a bit of chat. And there were dogs on the call, there was kids on the call. So I think, that's the right way of working piece, and some of the right work. Sometimes the right work just isn't another action and another call about another action. Yeah, sometimes it's a call about just talking about performance and potential. And interestingly, if you're a leader or manager and you've got a bunch of people who report to you, maybe you might ask the question around what percentage of your own potential is being exploited this week? And you might ask then the team members that you're there to help coach and develop and help to get the best out of, or, you know, might ask them the question, you know, what percentage of your potentially exploiting this week? And what could help us next week to exploit some more of that? Mm-hmm. So it can be highly personal, this question around potential, and the model can be applied to projects, to teams. And when you get really familiar with something like this, what we do out in Smurfit is we help people towards the end of our program to start applying this model to themselves personally. Am I the right person in the right role? Am I doing the right work in the right way? And it becomes it becomes another level of standard. Do you want me to take one last question before we move on, Caroline? Because I think we've got to 12:10. I think that's the cutoff point, isn't it?
We do. So let's I tell you what, let's move on, and then I'll save up the questions towards the end.
Okay, good. Okay, so last poll. I pulled the model together. You'll see the top of the model, performance design. You'll see the bottom of the model, performance dynamics, and you'll see the machine. So I've been getting you to engage with each of the aspects of the model. Now what I want you to do is I want you to pick what one part of the model, if you worked on it, could boost the performance potential of your project or team in the next 90 days. What one part? Let's see what comes up for people. I'm going to give it another 4 or 5 seconds, and we'll see. Okay. So if anyone wants to, feel free to take a photograph of that screen so that they have a picture of the model, the total of the model. We will send out the visual of the total model to people within the next 5 or 6 days of the session, so that you have the visual of the total meta model, which is the driver, team, machine, and the 22 key factors. So now you've picked one part of the model that, if improved, could boost the performance potential of your team or your project. What I'd now ask you is, what impact, what number would you put on that improvement? So the next poll is to get you to think about that question. So what impact could improving that part of the model have on your project or team's performance potential in the next 90 days? So this is a critical question. We're raising awareness to a new way of thinking, and we're dialoguing that together as a project team or a team. We're rating the model, we're engaging with the model visually and physically. And now what we're asking the members of the team to do is to pick one part of the model that, if improved, could have an impact on that performance potential. And we're getting them to put a number on it. We're getting them to tie a metric to that. This is really, really critically important, because this is the potential to take a team from, we'll say, 64%, maybe up to even 84% by improving this winning move. Like if you take, there's people here who think that making the improvement could drive 4 to 6% performance potential. Others think there's 31% of the audience who are saying that improving that key area could drive performance potential by up to 30%. So typically what we find in teams is that they can quickly identify one, maybe two, we call winning moves, parts of the model that, if improved, could have an impact on the performance potential. And typically that range sits in over 7 to 25% range. Now what I encourage teams to do is, if they're saying that improving focus and ambition, for example, could improve the performance potential by 20%, we respectfully challenge them and say to them, well, what if that was only 10%? Would that still have an impact? Is that the part of the model that they need to go after, that they need to work on over the period of time? So it's really important to put a number towards this part of the model that if improved. It's a hypothesis. It's a hypothesis that can then be tested with the team. And this comes back to, again, testing and respectfully challenging to drive on for performance potential if we work on this key area. So that's the measurement. So the final question I have for you, the final poll, and I know that we've asked you to engage with 8 polls. What we wanted to do was bring a level of interactivity today. So what I wanted to do is, what impact might improving the chosen part of the model have on you personally? So you, the person who's been on this call, on this webinar, you've selected a part of the model. You've engaged with all parts of the model, but now you've selected one part of the model. You've said that it can improve performance potential by a certain percentage. What will it do for you personally? Let's see what some of the answers are. Hit my targets. There's an efficient workflow, less firefighting, bigger bonus. Wow, fantastic. Energize me, remove the noise. Brilliant. Got 3, 2, 1. So the poll is now going to lock. So this is one of the key things that we ask people, that you not only look and engage with a model like this as a collective, that you look in at this and you say, once the winning move or the key part of the model has been chosen that you're going to work on, that you connect that back to you personally, what it can do for you personally. So it can deliver productivity improvements. It could reduce my stress, help with new client acquisition, improve team togetherness, ensure my job. That's really interesting. Quite a number of the organizations that we're working right now are corporate organizations, and there's a pressure coming down to reduce costs and to streamline, and that's a difficult conversation to be had. So, you know, if you can pick a winning move that can help you maybe reduce costs or improve efficiency, but do that with the team. This isn't a case of, one of the things I wanted to stress in the call, isn't about a case of that we're trying to drive people even harder to work even more. What it is we're trying to give people a way of thinking and a way of looking at their critical projects and teams so that they can remove some obstacles, which will help drive not only performance, but potential, and drive that performance to potential ratio. Okay. I'm coming to the end. It's 12:04. We said we'd wrap it at 12:10. We started off by saying to you today, we want to give you 3 big ideas. The first idea was the concept of performance potential and asking what we call this big question: what percentage of your full potential is presently being exploited? Combine the words performance and potential. It's a P to P ratio. That's what I'd encourage you to do. There's a lot of people who talk about let's unlock high performance and let's maximize potential. You've got to bring those 2 things together, performance and potential. So what's your performance potential ratio? That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to share with you is there's a concept of performance gains or losses. Performance gains or losses are rooted in those 22 areas. You know, we've got to find where the sources of performance gains or losses are on the model, and then we've got to help to remove them. So what we've got you to do is think about big question, performance gains and losses, and reframe a very complex topic, which is leadership, teaming, and execution, and pull them all together into one model that you can use to find potential and find a source of energy for yourself. So how to get from A to B, looking at the model and help your teams to engage in that model. And that's one of the things that we do, as I say, over the first 2 days of one of our programs out in Smurfit, and what our passion is to help people to drive that forward. I'm gonna leave it at that slide, Caroline. If there's 1 or 2 questions before we get into the final wrap up, I think we're running to 12:07, so we've got about 3 or 4 minutes before we wrap up. I can't hear you there, Caroline.
Technology.
Yeah.
We had a question from Bob earlier on around the area of where does enterprise risk management fit into the model?
Yeah. So, well, what I'd say to you is all of this is risk. every aspect of this is risk. If there's if people, so we encourage people, so Bob, essentially, when we engage in our programs, we ask people to go online and do some data analytics around this model, and they measure over 200 variables. Those 200 variables are a source of either performance gain or performance loss, depending on how you see things. If there's a red or an amber on any aspect of this model, it's a source of risk. If you're start off and you say to me, you're taking a critical project and you're putting it at 60% of the full performance potential, there's a risk. There's a 30% risk. So we're in fact working on one critical project with, can't tell you the name of the organization, but it's a very large organization. And the performance potential of the strategic project is sitting around 65%. So, you know, we've been talking with that team and saying, okay, well, we want to get that project to 85%. So there's a 20% risk. So we're playing with a 20% risk right now. And the risk factors are there in front of us. So if we're not able to say we've high levels of satisfaction with how we're doing on every one of those elements, there's a level of risk associated with it. So the model is a model that can be used for collaborative awareness. It's a model that can be used for risk management. It depends on how you're looking at things. Have you another question, Caroline?
Okay. I do. I'm just wondering, am I frozen, or possibly you might be a little bit frozen there. So I'll go ahead and it's okay. So Maria actually had a question here. What is the typical performance gain achievable?
Yeah, so that's interesting. 7 to 25% is typical, is what we look to, but we look to do that in phases. I think the first 7 to 10% can be won in a kind of 90 to 120 day period. It's once you move up into that zone of close to the 75% that the percentages are harder won. And how we look to put measurement on things is when you're working with a team, you've got to measure everything at the start, and then you've got to measure things right through. And you've got to bring both quantitative data and qualitative data. Qualitative data is when people come together and engage with a model like this. That's qualitative data. Quantitative data is the data that you get when you put people through and you get them to answer loads of various different questions around all these factors, and you pull that qualitative and quantitative together. So you need different types of data. So I'd say to answer the question there, typically you can get from 7 to 10, over 90 to 120 day periods. It's after that it becomes harder, because when you're operating in that zone of peak performance, it's hard to win the percentages there. And it's about, and I have to stress this, it's not about being in the zone of peak performance all the time. It's about spending more time in the zone of peak performance for your projects and teams. If you ask anybody in Formula One, any of the drivers, they will say to you, if they're operating at 90% of their capability, 90% of the time, that's achieving peak performance for them, because if they're at any further, they're probably on the risk of hurting people and hurting themselves. And I think that's something that links back to psychological safety earlier, the question. You've got to ask yourself how far up the scale we can go. Yeah, because performance and well-being are two sides of the same coin. Yeah, and we've got to realize that, all of us, particularly now in these environments.
Okay.
Is there one final
really
one,
nice
Caroline?
question. Yes, a great question from Neve about, to summarize, and we'll make these available afterwards, but basically, how do you make these gains and losses real for senior stakeholders when they feel that, cost cutting and constraining budgets are the answer? Any tips for convincing senior management about the on the ground impact of these cost cutting decisions to achieving performance potential?
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is I'll make available the first 2 chapters of Pit Stop to Perform to anybody who's been on the webinar. And there's examples in the first 2 chapters of how we can make these real to senior executives. That's the first thing, because it could get into a long detailed answer. I think you've got to come at it from 2 ways. First of all, you got to be thinking about the senior executive we're trying to go to engage in this concept. So are they somebody who responds to a gain or a loss? Yeah. So some of the senior executives that we operate with respond more to a loss. So we quantify the impact of the performance losses using money. So if a team, the costs will say €6 million to run the team, and they're operating a performance potential of 70%, we can apply a 25% factor to the cost of that team, and that's the loss. So 25% by 6 million, whatever, that's the loss on the team. That's one. And for project teams, what we're finding now, we have an example of 26 members on a project team that have figured out that their right way of working, that they're losing over 3 hours a week due to ineffective collaboration. So do 26 by 3 hours, and you do your maths on that, you're getting back equivalents of 1-2 FTEs onto the project. So it's about how you think to the next level of quantifying the impact. But as I say, there's some really good, nice little case studies and samples in the first 2 chapters of Pit Stop to Perform, which we're quite happy to share with you. It's reading that we would give out in our programs, as you know, Caroline. So quite happy to give you a link to those things. And I can't remember the name of the lady who asked that question.
Neve.
Neve. But if Neve wants any more information on that, we're quite happily we can have a chat. Yeah. Okay.
No, that's very generous, John. I think just looking at the time, we might.
So I was going to wrap up and just say that just all the programs that we're delivering together, Caroline, kind of fit in under these various different headings: strategic development, organizational initiatives, and market-related initiatives, and all of the faculty work in these key areas. So if anybody is interested in kind of how they can unlock the full performance potential of their projects or teams and want to delve down into some of these domains, I guess it's to contact you or contact any member of the team, and we'd be delighted to talk to them about it. And if anybody who's been on the call wants to have a chat with me, quite happily reach out to me. There's my email address. Caroline's details are there. And we'd be delighted to talk to you. And it's been a pleasure. God, it's 12:13 already, so we're just bang on time. We said we'd wrap in the hour and a quarter, so here we are. So thank you. I'll hand back to you, Caroline.
Thank you, John. So thank you on behalf of our team. It's been really informative, really engaging, really beneficial, and the feedback we've received through the chat feature would say the same. So thank you again, everybody, for your time today. We really enjoyed your participation. We have programs running in the autumn. As you know, we'll share a schedule after the webinar with a copy of this recording. You're going to get a lovely email from Maria in the coming days with links to what John referenced in this session. But if you are thinking about a program, be it strategy, leadership, coaching, or indeed the high performance sales program, do let us know. Limited places are remaining. So reach out to us and we'll have a one-to-one call with you and answer any questions that you have. And we look forward to seeing you back on campus in person come September. And yes, thanks again, John, on behalf of all of our team and everybody on the webinar today.
Thank you all.
And we're going to end now, and we will send details of the next webinar shortly. Thank you.